Suits you. I think it suits you.
Yeah, yeah, I look much better. Yeah, yeah, of course.
Here we go.
Excellent.
Oh,
Okay.
let's fix it so that you look like a James Bond. I will fix it. Don't worry. If it doesn't want to stick, I'll put a tape on it.
Yeah.
The ear.
Well, I have two, so one can live with just one. That's
Okay.
fine. Okay. Okay. Now I can keep it, I guess. Yeah. But it's fine. I don't need a. It's fine. I think.
A little bit fluffy.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. With the sounds. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, no, what's in the very plastic over.
Yeah. We have to start. Okay. Excellent. You know that I have been James Bond in my previous life. Yeah. 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 Thank you. Okay. So I think we should. Do you get the people on? No, no. Just get the people to sit here. No, no. I just put myself in the middle, and they. Yeah. Yeah.
For the point, you got 6 panels.
Yeah. 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 No, no. It's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Q&A, they will use this one.
Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah.
That's why you go.
Absolutely. Sit down. Take a seat.
I don't want to be in the middle. I think the money vast and higher level have to be in the middle.
Hi, Tom. Nice to meet you. Take seats. Hi. Good to see you. Hi. Take a seat. No, there's no specific order, so maybe let's see that the women are not completely nice too. No, I think it's okay. No, no, Alison is. Uh, I go here and you go there, and then we have Alison here. What is in there? Is it okay with the sound? Do we have? Are there any speak? Ha! There are no loudspeakers here, so we don't hear us anyway. So we can start. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I hope you. There are no loudspeakers here. I think it's not meant. This is meant for online only. Ah, you have headsets. If you can't hear me, take from the. It's like a silent disco. So you will not have a microphone. Please take your headsets. I think that's the way that it's meant to be. Those that are not hearing. So it's,
Hello,
you
testing.
first, make sure that you have a mic.
Hello.
Maybe Allison, he will be first, so we can then. Thank you. Okay, can you hear me? Do we exist? Yes? Number three, whatever number three is. Ah. Okay, and the chance. Okay, I think let's start. We're already a few seconds behind schedule. No, apparently it's a number three. Yeah. No, I don't. I think we hear each other, I think. But we'll,
Apparently for online.
well, it's the first day, things take time, so let's give it us a few seconds so that everyone that needs a headset can get one. So can you hear me on the? Yeah, on channel 3. So can you hear me? Okay, many people can hear me. Okay, all right, let's start. So as you know, this early morning session is about the first international treaty on AI, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which has been concluded earlier this year. And of course, the aim is to cope, to help us cope with the risks and opportunities that AI offer or bring. And I will not go into detail about risks and opportunities because we all by now more or less know what these are, at least for the time being. So let's start right with Ambassador Dowling from Australia. Australia was also actively participating in the negotiations of the treaty until this March. So how does Australia view the balance between innovation and safeguards so that we have a robust and resilient innovation thanks to AI, but also make sure that human rights, democracy, and rule of law is protected?
Thank you. Look, that's the key question I think we're all grappling with. We all see the upsides of AI. We all see the benefits for development, for economic opportunity. But with every new phase of digital technology, we've seen human rights, the rights of women and girls, the rights of freedom of speech, democracy jeopardized. So I'm really positive about the Council of Europe's effort here to get ahead of the curve, to say that we will step in early in the development of this technology and its far more ubiquitous use, and try to set some guardrails, protections for rights, speech, the preservation of democracy. I think we made the mistake in earlier phases of technology, when we saw software development in the 90s, when we saw social media in the early 2000s, in saying we trust the technology world, we trust commercial entities to prioritize safety and rights online. And I think we learned the hard way that that's not the case, that we shouldn't expect commercial entities to be the guardians of rights and privacy, that that's a role for governments and civil society to work together on. AI is a fast evolving area of technology, but I think what this treaty does is set some very clear principles and parameters that say, here are the expectations that governments have on the development of this technology. Here is how we expect all platforms to preserve rights, privacy, ensure their technology is not misused. And so I think acting that early in a way that's not overly onerous or prescriptive, I think the treaty strikes that right balance where it will not stifle innovation. We feel that it's a very commendable effort to try and set those parameters early in this particular phase of AI to ensure that we're not looking back in 10 years' time saying, well, we wish that we'd done more in the early phase to preserve rights and democracy.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Dowling. Now we go to the west, to the United States. We have Alison Peters here, Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor, the State Department. So, Ms. Peters, the US was very active in the negotiations on that treaty, as we have been able to read also in some journals. How do you see the treaty promoting respect for human rights, democracy around the world, and not just in Europe or in the United States? And how does the convention, the way it is in front of us now, reflect the United States approach for rights respecting AI?
Well, first and foremost, just a huge thank you to you, Thomas, and your incredible team. I think it has been several years of negotiations and close partnership, I think, across governments engaged in the Council of Europe. And it is because of your leadership that we're really here today, talking about the fact that many of our countries have now signed the world's first ever treaty on artificial intelligence, and that's quite a feat. I think, second, we really need to acknowledge that in a context in which we continue to have debates in the United Nations and in the broader multilateral system in terms of the ability of international law, particularly international human rights law, it's quite striking that the world's first ever treaty on artificial intelligence is focused on human rights, democracy. The United States engaged in this negotiation process because we see a couple of key benefits in having a legally binding convention on artificial intelligence. Opportunities and risks that we see as it relates to artificial intelligence and emerging technologies. But we know first and foremost, having a convention will really help us set a shared baseline on rights respecting use, development, design of artificial intelligence. And that shared baseline goes beyond just, the United States and other countries sort of in the global north, right? That shared baseline is a shared baseline that is really global in context, that is applicable to every single country that is here at IGF and beyond. But we know, given the debates that we're seeing in terms of human rights and their applicability to emerging technologies, that having a sort of shared baseline amongst democracies on rights respecting design, development, and use of AI is critical. Certainly, the benefits don't end just with implementation of this convention, as we've seen, for example, in the Council of Europe context, where we have the Budapest Convention on cybercrime, having an instrument in which our governments can focus on shared cooperation, having a mechanism for shared cooperation is incredibly useful, is incredibly salient as we continue to debate issues around cybercrime in the UN system now. The follow-up cooperation mechanisms that we expect with this AI convention will also, I think, provide a really important opportunity to advance our shared efforts and promote human rights, democracy, and the rule of law on the context of artificial intelligence, including allowing us to really share best practices across the board, across governments, across regions. Third, I will say, you asked the question on how this helps advance sort of the U.S. priorities as it relates to artificial intelligence. And as we look at the need to place safeguards on AI systems and the companies that develop them, it's also really critical that we preserve the space for innovation, right? We don't want to do anything as it relates to regulation that cracks down on innovation, doesn't allow that innovation to happen. And so certainly, with this convention, we see a convention that allows us to harmonize various different international approaches to AI, and one that still allows companies to innovate, to be creative, to create new AI systems that help really advance the opportunities as it relates to AI, but also help crack down on some of those risks that we're talking about. In our system, all of these priorities are bipartisan in nature. So even though our government is changing over quite soon, this is a priority that we see across the board, across political parties in our countries. And we look forward to working with the many governments on this stage, but hopefully other governments here at IGF who will join us in this process. So again, just a huge thanks for having us today.
Thank you. And I think one point that is important is that it's not just the convention and the parties, it's the bigger cooperation setting around, which is something that we have been able to see with the Cybercrime Convention, with the Budapest Convention, as an important factor as well. Let us now move to another ICE country, Canada. Mr. Fairchild, you also participated very actively, work on the treaty, helping us to count the hours that we have left to find compromise on everything. So if you could share your insights on into how international cooperation can strengthen the treaty and ensure that it reflects the shared values of democratic nations.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and good morning to everybody. It's great to be here. Day zero, it's always a bit of a cold start. So thank you. And I think, first of all, I'd start by thanking the Council of Europe. We have some of the staff here from the actual process in the room. It was a very long journey, but I think at the end of the day, the result speaks for itself. So I think, and just to reflect a bit of the earlier comments, I mean, this is the first international treaty on an emerging technology. I think it's really important to reinforce that, you know, it's the Council of Europe that brought forward this idea and has seen the creation of effectively what is the first legally binding instrument that is creating obligations on signatories to uphold certain values, human rights, respect for democracy, and the rule of law. I think that's an important statement in and of itself, because it's very different from a lot of the other work that's going on in other multilateral fora, which are speaking more on the normative basis. And I think, which is why Canada, who's not a member of the Council of Europe, it was an observer to the process, and others on the floor here, really sought to participate, because this was our opportunity to frame at the international level effectively the first legally binding instrument. So from our perspective, it was crucial to be there. As an active participant on the delegation, we spent a lot of time trying to involve as many states as possible. And so I think this is another important element to bring to the debate. It's not the UN, but at the same time, we felt it was extremely important to try to get as many member states from as many regions involved in the process. And so throughout the nearly 2 years of negotiation, we saw a gradual increase, not only in the number of participants, but in fact, signatories, hopefully at the end of the day. And so a cluster of observer groups in and of themselves.
Could you bring me?
Okay.
Could you bring me also an earphone? Yeah, for me.
Okay. And I think that's an important statement. So, and we continue in that regard. So even past the end of the negotiations, we're seeing more states actively coming forward, trying to become part of the process. Of course, post negotiations, it's sort of, you have to take the treaty as it is, but we are seeing increased interest, particularly the Americas showed a high level of interest. Asia as well. We had Japan, who was one of the observers, but more countries at this point seemingly coming forward with an express interest. And why is because they also have, at the national levels, everybody is become fascinated with the question of what to do about AI. AI is a step change in the environment. It's an enabling technology, which means if you haven't regulated, legislated, or created frameworks to manage AI, it is going to impact pretty much every sector of your government and every public policy area. And so for us from the beginning, we were also part of the previous process that the Council of Europe ran for the 2 years prior to the launch of negotiations. This was all about framing, and it's important. Member states have obligations. And so the context of this framework instrument was to create a baseline. And this is an interesting second point is, this is one of the few areas where we were negotiating international treaty where there was, frankly, no floor. Most member states don't have AI legislation. So it wasn't about leveling up at the international level. It was actually about creating the baseline level to which member states have to now meet. And so it was a very unique opportunity for Canada, who is quite advanced in its own legislative and regulatory frameworks, to help, in fact, create that floor. And so I think we were quite successful. Always negotiations is about concessions. So at the end of the day, I think, could we have had a stronger instrument? Yes. Could we have had a weaker instrument? Yes. And I think, at least from Canada's perspective, there was a fine balance to the negotiations. But at the end of the day, what we have successfully created are baseline obligations that member states now have to take away. And as they develop their own regulatory and national legislative frameworks, they must meet these obligations. And I think that was a critical reason for us to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I'm now nicely cabled and hearing myself several times with several loops. So yes, I think this is an important element that you named, that we didn't start like comparing our national bases, but we had to basically set this floor, set this baseline from scratch, which was a challenge, but it was also an opportunity to seize. So now we go to a European country for once. We have Isil Demirec from Turkey. You were also actively participating in the negotiations. How is Turkey planning to implement this convention? How are you going to organize yourself so that you address the challenges posed by AI and help your country to stay innovative at the same time?
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for the organization and the invitation as well. I hope my voice is okay. So as a member of the Council of Europe, Turkey recognizes the transformative potential of AI, and obviously it brings with it a profound batch of legal and ethical questions. And the rapid spread of AI made it essential for everyone to take proactive steps to uphold AI principles at every stage of the AI lifecycle, which we were addressing at the CAI as well. To establish a robust framework that fosters ethical, sustainable, and innovative AI while addressing the unique challenges that AI poses, we have adopted the National AI Strategy back in 2021. It was drafted together with the Digital Transformation Office and the Ministry of Industry and Technology, and it is built upon 6 strategic priorities, which includes regulating to accelerate socioeconomic adaptation. As such, one of the ways Turkey is planning to address these challenges is through strengthening the legal framework. This is being done through amendment of existing laws or adopting of new ones as necessary. And alongside the AI rules and regulations, we are also working on our frameworks concerning both personal and non-personal data, because we cannot separate the two from together, as data is an integral element of AI technologies. So as per the strategy, Turkey's core objective focus on establishing an agile and inclusive process, developing governance mechanisms that promote impartiality, privacy, ethical oversight, and algorithmic accountability, while we also enhance data capacity to assess AI socioeconomic impacts. The strategy also underscores the importance of fostering innovation, which was one of our concerns at the CAI as well, and ensuring alignment with international ethical standards. So I will be very briefly listing some of the key measures to support these goals. Aligning national AI regulations with international frameworks and commitments to maintain consistency with global governance structures, creating an AI impact assessment framework, which we are currently dealing with at the CAI, to evaluate ethical, social, and economic impacts of AI systems, preparing and implementing guidelines for algorithmic accountability and explainability to ensure transparency in automated decision-making, and encouraging capacity building initiatives and public awareness in AI use. These are some of the issues that we're actually dealing with at the CAI. So it is essential to emphasize that these legal challenges require legal solutions beyond just legal considerations. because we need to encompass social, financial, political, and other dimensions at the same time. And Turkey's unique position, geopolitical and geostrategic position, influences its approach to global AI governance. That's why we have been actively monitoring and participating in international efforts to shape AI governance frameworks, not just at the CAI, which is also one of the strategy's 6 priorities. This commitment is also clear in our active involvement at the CAI processes from the very beginning, since the CAI, which led to the development of the first global legally binding AI treaty. So we are aware that we are at the forefront of disruptive technological change, and it is evident that AI holds immense power, potential to shape our societies for the better. But how can we do this? We need robust ethical and legal frameworks that guide the process. So the Framework Convention emerging from the CAI process represents a pivotal step in this direction, which embodies the collective efforts of nations to ensure AI aligns with human rights, democratic values, and shared global practices. We must recognize that AI knows no borders, and its impact is inherently global. Therefore, a legally binding international instrument is not just desirable, but also essential to address these issues to create a unified approach. Well, this instrument, we hope, will ensure accountability, transparency, and fairness while fostering trust among stakeholders to also help the development of this technology. Therefore, we will continue to be actively contributing and remaining in the CAI processes and alongside our other work on AI and other technological advancements. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isil. And I think it's also important to raise the importance of data and data governance. The convention, of course, deals mainly with AI, but you find hints to data across the convention. And particularly if you look at the explanatory report, then of course you find references to appropriate data quality and other issues related to data. Now we have an online participant. I hope the connection works. It is a colleague, Tetsushi Hirano from Japan. Japan has been also a very active participant in the negotiations on that treaty at the Council of Europe in Strasbourg. But Japan has not only been very active at the Council of Europe. Japan has also led other important initiatives like the G7 Hiroshima framework. And of course, Japan is also active in other processes like OECD and others. So Tetsushi, I hope you are there. My question to you would be, how does Japan's approach to AI governance align with the principles being proposed in this treaty? See whether the connection works. Any information from the, it's coming. What's the time in Japan now? What is the time difference? It's already in the afternoon.
Oh, do you hear me?
Yeah. Or we can, if there's some difficulties, we have one more physically present human being here supposed to talk. We can switch the order, Vadim. No, it's coming. Okay. So let's.
Do you hear me?
Yep. Now we hear you. Hello.
Oh, okay. Hello, Thomas. Thank you very much
Did you hear my
for
question, or
invitation.
should I repeat it?
No, I listened. And,
Okay,
so
excellent. So
there's
we're happy to listen to you now, Tetsushi.
okay. Thank you.
If you can speak
So
up a little louder, your voice is a little low, so that may help.
Do you hear me clearly
Yeah.
now?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm very happy to be able to participate in this session to discuss this important international treaty with familiar faces from the negotiations. And I would like once again to thank Thomas and the CAI Secretariat for their outstanding work and support throughout the negotiation process, and to congratulate 10 states and the EU for signing the convention. And in answer to Thomas, I think it is symbolic that this treaty was adopted in an institution that was founded on the bitter lessons of the Second World War. At the heart of what the Council of Europe stands for are common values that Japan shares. This is one of the reasons why, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, Japan, together with Canada, the United States of America, and Mexico, became an observer in the Council of Europe. And these common values are crystallized in different ways in international law and in the constitution of the 557 states that have agreed on the framework convention on artificial intelligence. The aim of the convention is to ensure that the activities within the life cycle of artificial intelligence systems comply with existing international and national legal obligations. This means that Japan, along with 56 other countries, has agreed on a framework to carry the shared values into the future, where AI systems will be used in every corner of society. Some of the principles of the framework are transparency, equality, privacy, reliability, which are developed taking into account the socio-technical characteristics of AI technology. These principles will be operationalized through a risk and impact management framework. In my view, one of the challenges for the implementation of this treaty is the operationalization of these principles in accordance with existing legal obligations. It seems that the key lies in building capacity on the ethical, legal, and social implications of the technological characteristics of AI, such as explainability or accuracy. This summer, Japan launched a new discussion on the future domestic framework for AI regulation under the AI Strategy Council, taking into account the existing laws, guidelines, and as well as recent achievements in international fora, including the Hiroshima AI process. At the same time, we are accelerating the internal process of signing the convention. I am convinced that these two processes strike the right balance between innovation and regulation and will create a productive synergy. We can expect the Hiroshima process to have a productive impact on discussions in national level as well as in other international fora, including the Council of Europe, on the risk management of the advanced AI systems. On the other hand, one of the important impacts that the AI convention can have on the Japanese
The connection has turned really bad.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. So you can tell us what, yeah. We have a little
Yes.
bit of a technical issue here. If you could repeat the last few sentences that you said, because we have missed it.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Thank you.
Okay, good. And we can expect the
Now
Hiroshima
we can't
process
hear
to
you.
have a
We don't hear anything. It's just
Uh-huh.
very faint noise, but our 500 people
I don't
technical
know.
team is already working on it. So,
Okay. Probably we can come back to you later. Do you hear me now? Do you hear me? Hello?
I think we've heard some elements from you at least. There seems to be a problem that here in the room we can't hear you anymore. Maybe let's
Okay.
use the time, and we're happy to take you back in the discussion.
Sure.
Let's move on to Mr. Gibson. you may not have anything to do with the famous guitar brand, but you work for the UK government, so yeah. Now that you signed the convention, how do you use the convention to also move things ahead on national level, and how are you seeing international cooperation thanks to the convention, but also in other frameworks? What are the UK's plans for the coming months? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Lester. Yes, not quite linked to the Gibson guitars. I do get that, and I do get Mel Gibson as my uncle as well. So. But
it looks like him a little.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, yes, in answer to your question, I think a good way of framing this is looking at starting off by considering the UK's approach to AI governance. Obviously, we've had a government recently, and we're thinking about the opportunities of AI and really want to capitalize those as well in order to turbocharge economic growth. And, you know, without a sort of sense of an understanding of the risks, mitigating risks, tackling key risks as well, we won't be in a position to fully capitalize or, you know, capture the full potential of technology as well. And so that's the kind of key framing I think is really important when we go into discussing the Council of Europe AI Treaty as well as other international governance frameworks. Really understanding that working together, cooperation and setting global baselines due to the transcendental cross-border nature of the technology is fundamental, and really harnessing the potential of every sort of input from different countries, civil society, and the private sector as well, whilst recognizing that in order to really capture the benefits, opportunity, and harness innovation, you need a technology that is trustworthy, that those risks are understood, that you can have that safe, secure, trustworthy AI, and really capture that as well. So I think that's been a sort of key framing, I think, for us as well. At the international level, we've really not been able to sort of highlight it to such an extent, though, but in the UK, we sort of had the first AI Safety Summit, and actually that paved the way for a great deal of discussion on a lot of these risks and what we need to do to mitigate that. And in doing so, we were very keen to really reinforce in the Bletchley Declaration the importance of safe, secure, trustworthy AI and building that understanding of risk as well. With that in mind, we were also very keen to really harness the possibilities of securing innovation for that. And so bringing frontier AI labs and companies on board in that process has been really fundamental, and really highlighting the importance of getting voluntary commitments, pushing the conversation along with a range of sectors to really ensure that the public and different sectors can buy into that technology. That has continued in other areas of international AI governance as well. We've really reflected this in the UN environment, so the Digital Compact, we really wants to reinforce the importance of a multi-stakeholder input. In the UN resolutions, which were agreed in 2024, we wanted to really push that there were flexible and differentiated approaches. That's kind of reflective of the UK approach, that in order to get that trust, you need a proportionate approach to governance, and that's a fundamental recognition. So you get the balance between innovation and safety. Coming to the Council of Europe specifically, though, I think this has been an opportunity for us to really reinforce the UK's value add in the conversation. So we have taken a sort of very reflecting on the proportionate amount, a balanced, targeted, agile approach to AI governance. So we look at things sort of separately in our regulatory approach at the moment. So allowing different regulators to engage with the technology and regulate technology in a sort of more light touch approach, ensuring that these all work together and really harness the potential that way. However, we are thinking about sort of on that and recognizing the role of innovation with a new regulatory innovation office, with a model for responsible innovation, supporting the technology. And this is the sort of approach that we have reflected in the Council of Europe AI Treaty negotiations as well, to bring us to that point. So the UK was really keen to reinforce the merits of balanced language. So ensuring that there is not too much prescription detailed, so being too over-prescriptive might make it a bit too challenging for a lot of different countries to get on board. So looking at the range of different countries here, I think we recognize that we want a range of different regulatory approaches to be recognized in the Council of Europe Treaty, and also reinforcing the importance of new and other countries who are a bit nascent in their regulatory approach to AI to come on board as well. However, I think the importance is balancing that with clarity, and we were really keen to push the point about clarity in text. These are some legal obligations, involving human rights. We want to be really clear that people understand the technology, and that comes back to my point about trust. Trust, we can't really capture the technology as well. And I think this was reflected in a couple of really interesting provisions in the convention as well. So a provision on safe innovation, another provision which ensured that research and development could be safeguarded, and wasn't necessarily always fully in line, and making sure that that can be continued despite or in spite of the convention as well, but really making sure that's crystal clear. And we wanted to make really clear that we could be a bridge as well as the UK. So talking about that proportionate approach to governance, we recognize that all these different regulatory approaches will be needed. And towards the end, when it might have looked a little bit challenging to get agreement, we were really keen to be pragmatic, provide a sort of basis in bringing a group of people together on the sort of final throes in the 11th hour of the negotiations to come together and find those areas of overlap on the more challenging areas. So how we could apply the convention, and make sure we could get all the relevant countries on board so that this could be a successful global treaty. So we were really keen to really be pragmatic, to really reinforce those points about trust as well. And I think that's reflective in our international AI governance approaches.
Thank you very much, Mauricio. And indeed, it was not easy, and hopefully we get a few minutes for discussion also in the end. The idea to make something that holds across time with principles, but also to have it sufficiently clear, but not too over prescriptive in detail was and is not an easy task, and will also be a challenge in implementing it. Now, I wonder, we would have another very active participant, but apparently, Argentina is a country that was also very active, but apparently the connection somehow didn't make it across the ocean. So, but just to say that Argentina would have been an example of one of the Latin American countries that have been participating. There were about 5 or 6 Latin American countries that were already during the negotiation active in the work on this treaty, but we'll see whether we can connect to her later. So with this, we have gone through the panelists, unless I miss somebody, which doesn't seem to be the case. So we could actually use a few minutes to also allow the people in the room and also online to make comments and questions. We have a mic here. So just, stand up and make yourself heard if you want, and we'll try to have some interaction also with the audience here. Yes, please present yourself and then.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Dr. Rafael Delis Aguirre. I'm at the Max Delbruck Center in Germany. And as a member of the scientific community and a developer, what impact do you foresee that such a treaty will have for us in our daily lives coding? Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a very good question. Any of you who wants to reply to this? Alison?
Well, thank you first and foremost for the question. I think I can only speak for my government, but I also know I speak for several governments here, which is that throughout the negotiation process, with big recognition of the fact that this is a legally binding convention, making sure that the technical community could actually participate, and that we had on our delegation technical experts that were leading the negotiations was mission critical. I think, for us, and I think, my colleague from the UK spoke about this as well, making sure that we have a convention that is technically rigorous, that is practical, that is clear in terms of how it can be used, not just by governments, but also the technical community was really a big priority. I won't talk about every single provision of the convention, but I think for you and colleagues in this space, one of the key things that we're working on now is actually building out a risk assessment framework And again, we talked, I think every one of the panelists talked about the fact that this convention would be really a sort of shared baseline in systems that may not have an AI risk assessment framework. So in the United States, we have our NIST risk management framework, or RMF, as it's known by the technical community, that actually helps us do assessments of AI systems and managing risks and putting then in place technically rigorous safeguards that could manage those risks. But other systems don't have a NIST risk management framework, or don't have risk management frameworks that necessarily harmonize across systems. And so we are actually working to negotiate a risk assessment framework that could be used across the board, whether that be by governments or individuals in the technical community. And if you're not already tracking that process, we'd love to make sure that you are able to engage and that you're able to follow the negotiations, because I think for folks like you, that's going to be a really important thing that we build out, known as the Hudaria. And for us, again, making sure that that tool is technically rigorous, but also practical and interoperable across systems is really top priority in the current moment.
I would just also, add reinforcing everything my colleague from the US said. And I think another thing to touch upon is in the convention, there is a sort of, I think I touched upon it in my statement as well, but an exemption for research and development. So what that doesn't mean is it just excludes all and every single form of research and development from the convention, but it creates a sort of a limitation and a safeguard that in certain conditions, those undertaking certain R&D which might impact human rights can continue to do so with the necessary safeguards in place. So that was a really hotly focused on area that we really try to invest a lot of time so we could make sure that people like in your community have that space to continue doing things where there might be implications for human rights, and really continuing that as such. So that's a particular area which I think is important to highlight. The same with the safe innovation space, so creating a space for sandboxing and encouraging different regulations to engage in sandboxing, which can do things safely, and in that space, really creating the environment for that as well.
Just to add to this one comment, and indeed, one thing is to have some kind of harmonization or at least interoperability on legal terms. But then if you're supposed to implement this, and of course the convention, because it's supposed to hold for a few years, 10, hopefully 20, needs to be on a very general level. And this is why these risk impact and risk assessment frameworks are so important. And the second deliverable that the CHI, this Council of Europe Committee, is delivering is this Hudaria, the Human Rights, Democracy and Rule of Law Risk and Impact Assessment methodology. The key requirements on a very general level are part of the convention. We've just adopted what we call level 2 document, which is a 20-page guidance, a non-binding guidance document about how to do risk and impact assessment. And next year we'll be working on a much more detailed document with questionnaires and so on that go into fairly detailed level and this is the important thing, in cooperation with the IEEE, with IEC, the International Electrotechnical Committee, with ISO. So also to build the bridge between technical standardization institutions that programmers are probably more familiar with, to the legal standardization body. So that's a very good question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next.
Thank you. Good day, I'm Nigel Castamere from the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. And I'm wondering two things. One is, are there any arrangements for additional countries that might want to accede to this convention? And secondly, given that, it was I heard a lot of talk about negotiations and so on. And for us in the Caribbean, we would think that the countries that got this thing started would basically be kind of like mind. So I'm wondering, and apart from the processes for additional countries to accede, are there any thoughts about, as additional countries come in, to make allowances for, I don't know, adjustments to the treaty and that sort of thing? So I guess future processes in general.
David, thank you very much, Nigel, and good to see you. Very good question. Maybe one word. the Council of Europe has got nothing to do with the European Union. The Council of Europe, as was said, was like the UN of Europe, was created after the Second World War to try and bring peace in a sustainable way to Europe through securing human rights, democracy, and rule of law. It has no economic component, and it has 46 member states now, whereas the European Union, the members of the EU are all part or members of the Council of Europe. And the Council of Europe has this unique opportunity to not just develop soft law and hard law standards for its members, but it can also include other countries. We've already had 11 in the negotiations, and any member states, any country in the world that lives up to certain standards on human rights, democracy, and rule of law can become a part of the process. We have contacts with a number of countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America that are in contact with the Council of Europe to become part of the process, also to keep working on the Hood area, but also to become a potential future party of the convention. So we're very happy. And if you turn around, the tall man behind you is working for the Council of Europe, Vadim. He's willing to get into contacts with interested countries or stakeholders from other countries to actually broaden the basis. And the example of the cybercrime treaty actually shows that, I don't know the exact number, but the number of signature of parties is around 70. But the cooperation, actually, one is to have signed and ratified the convention. The other one is to cooperate around the process. And there's way more than 100 countries that are in contact with the Council of Europe and at least take over some of the elements, which helps to interoperability of legal systems, and then also the implementation mechanisms across the world. So you're very warmly invited to spread the message that this is a treaty that is open, that can be, and countries can join to become part of the treaty, but also to be a part of the wider process on cooperation and exchange of best practice. Yes, David?
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
we hear
Okay.
you.
Nigel?
Nigel.
Yes? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Great to hear from you, Nigel, and everything he said plus one. I think the important element, at least from Canada's perspective, is just we were not a member of the Council of Europe, so our participation was crucial simply because the concerns that Canadian legislative basis is different from Europe, is different from the EU. And so we had equities we obviously wanted to protect, values we wanted to bring forward in the process. I mean, on a personal basis, would I have loved to have seen more observer states, more blocks, whether it be CARICOM or others, participate in the process, the negotiations? Absolutely. But we can't change that. But what we did to make sure in the process of the negotiation was to create a conference of the parties. And so this is sort of once the treaty comes into force, which is a very low number of member state signatories and ratifications. It's an annual process for the members of the convention to come together and consider the treaty itself. It's a multi-stakeholder forum, which means, participation from the technical community, the civil society, private sector entities to continue to review, because inherently we understood that it's very hard to create international legislation that is future-proof. And so in a sense, whether you were part of the negotiations or not, obviously down the road, a member of CARICOM or CARICOM itself, being a part now and signing up allows you to be part of the ongoing dialogue. And I think the important element here is the treaty itself is very slim. It's not very long. It's not very detailed. It was about, as the expression goes, it doesn't matter what color the cat is as long as it catches mice. And what this treaty was trying to say is we were just trying to make sure we all understood what the cat should look like, not the color. The color is a national effort. And so, Canada has very advanced regulatory regimes. It's working on a piece of legislation. Other countries on this floor don't even have legislation or, and frameworks are of a different nature. And so the whole point is whether you're from Asia or from Africa or North America, it's as long as we adhere to basic principles, your cat can look very different, but as long as it's still a cat.
Thank you very much for this very good picture. Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Lina Viltrekene, and I am Lithuanian ambassador for digital economy. I would like to thank very much the Council of Europe, the chair and the panel for having this discussion on this first international treaty on artificial intelligence, human rights, and democracy and rule of law. So I intentionally said the long name of the treaty because the treaty was opened for signature in Vilnius, in my capital. And we are proudly calling this treaty as the Vilnius Convention. Proudly because it was also signed during the presidency of Lithuania to the Council of Europe, and it coincides very much with Lithuania's priorities during that presidency, including strengthening democracies, including protecting human rights, but also including fighting disinformation. And I wanted to emphasize this important element in the context of indeed alarming rise of disinformation, which really undermines human rights, and particularly of those groups of society that are most vulnerable, like children, like senior, like people with disabilities. So I just wanted also perhaps to raise a question: how do you see how the convention could contribute to fighting disinformation, particularly AI-driven disinformation and harmful content online?
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you and Lithuania for your support. And we're very happy throughout the process, also as a president of the Council of Europe during that period, also through organizing EuroDIC, the European IGF in Vilnius this year. So we're very happy that this is going to be, the convention is going to be known as the Vilnius Convention. On the question on disinformation, there's one very general reference, which is very fundamental, but it remains on a very general level about states' obligations to secure the functioning of democratic processes. And it doesn't go much further into detail because this is very difficult. It's also very different from country to country, how democratic processes are organized. So yeah, any short references maybe on how in your countries you deal with democracy? Maybe Isil from Turkey, do you have a...
Thank you. I just wanted to, I think you brought up a really important topic. Disinformation can definitely impact democratic processes, and this is one of the things we're trying to protect with this convention. And as our chair of CAI, previous chair of CAI has mentioned, this is a framework convention, so it's guiding the signatories to adopt measures or laws to prevent issues like this from happening. Well, as you correctly mentioned, the rise of disinformation can actually manipulate public opinion and in turn affect the democratic processes. So this can be something that can be developed by signatories in a more detailed manner in their own legal regimes, I believe. Thank you so much.
I think this is one of the problems that your government, our government, we're all facing this challenge of how AI changes the information environment. I'd first say that foreign interference, disinformation, these are not new challenges. These are long-standing issues. AI does supercharge the ability for actors to use tools. We've seen foreign states already using AI tools to conduct information operations in many countries. At the same time, we can overstate the risk of disinformation. We can sometimes see countries use the idea that disinformation is prevalent to censor political speech. So there's a very careful balance to be struck in terms of saying, yes, there is a threat to democracy, to democratic participation. However, there is also the risk that it is this narrative is used to censor free speech. So I think a really core obligation on us all is to build trust, to build an ability for our societies to critique the information environment, to be able to engage in information, so that we're not just believing stories that are out there. But this is not an area that governments should dive in too deeply, too quickly, because I think there is a rush that it can be over-corrected, and in fact, we can stifle the information environment in the desire to address disinformation.
Thank you. Unfortunately, 30 seconds for Alison, because time is up. We need to free the room, I guess, and also to the next one's just 30 seconds.
I just really wanted to thank Lithuania for your leadership in allowing us to have the signing in your country. And to come back to the point that Thomas started with, while this is not a dedicated convention on AI exacerbating disinformation or broader information integrity around the globe, it does deal with the use of AI systems by public sector actors, meaning governments, right? And so to the point that Ambassador Dowling made on this delicate balance between both addressing risks of artificial intelligence and safeguarding fundamental freedoms, I think we strike that right balance multilateral systems where governments are perhaps not striking that right balance, and debates around disinformation and broader information integrity. Having this shared understanding is going to be mission critical as we take forward those negotiations in those systems. So while it's not exclusively dealing with issues around information manipulation, I think it's certainly quite critical that we have this shared understanding to start.
Thank you very much. So we have to stop, but let me just finish with one reference to an online question about the relationship or how the Council of Europe Treaty can be useful to the bigger global UN environment, also helping to implement the provisions from the GDC. This is something we'll have more sessions on GDC, so you're very happy also to think about how this convention can contribute to implementing the GDC. And as Alison has said, and many others have said, this is a baseline. This convention will need to be and is already complemented by other more specific soft and hard law that follows the logic of the convention. So currently, for instance, at the Council of Europe, there's work on the impact of generative AI on freedom of expression, on democratic deliberations in a country. This is just one example. So thank you very much for your attention. Yeah, we'll look forward also to engaging again with countries that are not yet part of the process. You're very happy to come to me or to Vadim or to anyone that you've seen here on the panel. We're all very, very eager to connect with countries that we are not yet connected about the convention. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day online or offline. It's a little. Oh yeah, we need a Vadim, can you take a picture of us and then? So which ones do you want to first? This one here?